Hello friends, here I am with next part of this story, so I hope you all friends will like the video and subscribe to my channel. So let's start the video with summary. Naruto Uzumaki, little friend, powerful genin, and powerful half-god. How will Naruto handle being forced from his ninja life into the world where god and goddesses roam? Pairing Naruto x Artemis only. Why don't you tell me about yourself? Naruto yelled over the sound of wind rushing past them as he rode his bike at speeds now well surpassing what most cars could do. Disma was sure the two of them had already traveled over 200 miles in the last 2 hours. Not much to know. My dad is a polo, and my mother was a hooker from Florida. I came to camp when I was 3 years old, and I have spent most of my life training. Disma yelled near his ear as she hung on to his waist for dear life. If she fell off this bike at these speeds, she was going to get more than some scrapes. She would be missing chunks of her flesh and her bones would be shattered. That was more than she could heal. She was only good at healing bruises and poisons. Your mom was a hooker? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow, and he could feel her shrug her shoulders at him. She was a big-tittied bitch, and knew how to flip dad's switch. Disma said, and Naruto couldn't help but laugh at that one. That was actually a pretty good joke of her to tell. The hooker part seemed to be true, but the way she said it made it funnier than it should have been. Naruto wasn't going to hold the hooker part against her though, because you can't help who your parents are. What did I say about rapping? Naruto asked her, and he tilted his head to look at her straight in the eyes. She shrank back from the flames that seemed to lick at his eyes, and she was pretty sure that he wasn't even trying to look scary. His warm eyes just made the thought of disappointing him too unthinkable that it scared you when you thought you were annoying him. Sorry, I won't do it again, and I promise I'm not. Lion. Disma shouted in fear, and Naruto looked at her for a second before he realized why she yelled lion. Right in front of them was a huge golden lion easily the size of a pickup truck, and not only that but Naruto barely evaded it when it jumped at them. He ended up having to grab Disma quickly and tilted the bike so that they slid under the lion. This caused the lion to give chase after them, and Naruto saw the silver claws of the lion destroying the road behind them. Its fangs bared at them, and for a split second Naruto was worried. This is bullshit! Naruto yelled in annoyance at the fact they haven't even gone 1 day and they already had a fight on their hands. Right now Naruto was very sure he was cursed with shitty luck when it came to missions. Just pedal. Disma yelled in terror, because she was staring right at the damn thing and she finally remembered what the creature was. This was no ordinary lion, it was the nemean lion. A creature that had an impenetrable pelt, and that only Hercules had been able to truly defeat. What are the odds of us killing that thing? Naruto asked her with a small amount of excitement in his voice. Now that he thought about it, this was what he wanted, to battle monsters, and gain trophies from each one. We have no chance. Disma was now nearly crying in fear of this thing, and she missed the smile on Naruto's face. I like those odds. Naruto said as he tripled the speed of his pedaling, and shot ahead before turning the bike around and going right at the lion. You crazy bastard! Disma yelled, and she was about to jump off of the bike before she saw Naruto take his left hand off the bike. He snelled chakra through his arm to keep what he was about to do from breaking his bones, and for Disma time went in slow motion as the claws of the lion were an inch from Naruto's face, while his fist was an inch away from the lion's nose. Suck it! Naruto yelled when his fist knocked the lion off course, and the creature was forced to land on its side as blood gushed out of the creature's nose. Naruto slowed the bike to a stop, and started to shake his bleeding fist with a pain hiss. Even with his chakra strengthening him, he had broken the skin, as well as a few bones in his hand from that. You broke the nemean lion's nose, Disma muttered in shock, before she saw the creature get up. Even with one of the few non-fur covered spots of its body busted, it wasn't enough to make it want to give up this god-sent meal. The aura of a powerful immortal was coming off the blonde boy, and such a meal would be more tasty than any normal demigod. Get your bow ready and back me up from long distance, Naruto said as he hopped off his bike and the bronze-colored ring on his middle finger turned into his new dagger. Disma nodded and quickly started to use the bike to get some more distance away from the lion, because she would be no good in a close-range battle with such a creature. She had a bow and arrow for a reason. She sucked up fighting with any other weapons. Got it, and good luck! Disma yelled from her new spot about 50 feet away, and Naruto nodded with a grin. Things had just started to get a lot more exciting than he thought they were going to be. "Here kitty, kitty, kitty," Naruto said in a mocking voice, and he could tell he had irritated the nemean lion if the roars of rage were anything to go by. Naruto charged at the monster, and when the monster swung a mighty claw at Naruto, he grinned just before it hit, twisting his body. The claw went over his body and Naruto swung his knife. He was shocked though when the lion was completely unhurt by the attack. "Okay, so kitty has some bite to him," Naruto said blandly as he started to jump and flip through every attack the lion would send at him, while all his own didn't even pierce the lion. Naruto ducked under the claws of the creature again, before standing up as fast as he could and headbutting the monster in its open eye. Naruto blinked when the creature roared in pain, and he started to put two and two together. When Naruto had punched the nose, he had done damage, because the nose had no fur on it. When he had slashed at the fur he did no damage, and when he hit the eye, it had hurt the lion. Did this monster have some sort of defense related to its fur? I have a risky idea, Naruto thought as he started to run wind chakra along the edge of his dagger, and this time when the creature tried to take a bite out of Naruto he dropped to his knees and let the creature pass over him. Raising his dagger up, he stabbed at the monster's stomach, and saw a very thin cut appear. Painful, yet not deep enough to cause any real damage. The lion did roar in pain though, and kicked at Naruto's with its hind leg. A deep gash appeared on Naruto's shoulder, as his golden blood spilt on the road. Naruto winced in pain, before he rolled out of the way as the lion slashed at him again. Naruto winced worse when he rolled over on his injured shoulder, but he still channeled wind chakra through the knife, cutting through the pad on the underside of the lion's paw when it attacked again. Naruto saw an arrow hit the lion's side, but do no damage. The lion even ignored it in favor of forcing Naruto to roll to his feet to avoid getting his head ripped off. Bringing his hands together in a cross shape he grinned as the lion got closer. Shadow Clone Jutsu! Naruto yelled, and in 40 puffs of smoke a small army of clones appeared before him. All but 2 clones jumped at the lion, and each stuck themselves to the lion with chakra to slow it down. With 5 chakra-powered Narutos on each leg the monster was no longer able to move its legs, leaving it to become a sitting duck. The original Naruto stood up a grin that held his knife between his teeth, and on each side a clone was groping at the air above Naruto's palms until golden orbs of swirling power appeared in each palm. Naruto looked at the golden-colored Rasengans in his hand in shock as the clones poofed away. Was this the result of so much of his godly blood activating, like with his now golden blood? Holy shit! Desma yelled as she watched the battle Naruto was having, and Naruto grimaced. He had completely forgotten that she was there, but it was too late now. Might as well test some new power, Naruto muttered with a small sigh as he started to walk forward to the restrained lion. 38 clones of Naruto holding it down did not completely stop it, and that was pretty impressive. He picked up his speed until he was in a run, and then he popped 2 clones to give him enough room to hit the beast. The result? Epic. It would seem that his new, golden version of the normal form of the Rasengan was just as powerful as a big ball Rasengan, and 2 huge trails ripped through the ground and expanded so that the lion was completely covered by the golden chakra. Naruto sighed in relief as he saw that the fur on the lion's body start to grind away. As gold dust started to hit the ground the lion was sent skidding across. Naruto winced and looked down at his palms and saw that some of the skin had been ripped off as well. Soon though, he felt the pain in his shoulder and hands fade away as his new heightened healing factor took care of the wounds as if they had never been there. Naruto groaned though and took off his gold-stained shirt and jacket, before he grimaced at its condition. Rips and tears along the whole thing, and while still slightly usable it was not in condition for another fight. Instinct kicked in at that moment, and Naruto jumped in the air and over the lion as it passed over him, dust gushing out of its side, and using his torn shirt he landed on the lion's back and wrapped the shirt around its neck. Taking his knife out of his mouth, he channeled wind chakra once more and stabbed the creature right in the eye, more than deep enough to destroy the creature's brain. Naruto smiled and jumped off the dead monster as it turned into golden dust, leaving only a pelt behind as proof of Naruto's first victory. Picking up the pelt, he held it up in the air as a final sign of victory. "You did it!" Desma shouted as she started to run towards him, and Naruto watched as the pelt transformed into a long-sleeved golden vest with a longer than normal collar that covered his neck. Down the middle of the vest was a pure silver zipper for the vest, and Naruto didn't waste a moment to put on his victory trophy. He needed a new shirt anyway for the journey. Yeah, and that thing was tough. Naruto said as stretched his limbs out, and Isma looked at him like he was insane. He took out the nemean line like it was nothing, and has the gall to say something like that? If only she knew the kinds of things Naruto had done in his old job and in his old life before being sent to camp, then this wouldn't be so surprising to her. Actually, if Naruto hadn't gotten that weird boost to his Rasengan at the end, he was sure this would have been a lot more difficult to do. Not that he was complaining one bit, but he was still surprised. He had actually checked before, and before today his Rasengans had been blue. What was that? Desma yelled as she pointed at the crater that Naruto's attack had made earlier, and Naruto tried to think up an excuse as quickly as he could. He was not going to tell this girl everything, mostly because he didn't trust her fully yet. My special godly powers, Naruto said in a voice that fooled her into thinking he was telling the truth. It was half true, because compared to demigods, shinobi powers were on another level, and you didn't even need an affinity for something to use a different jutsu. You could have a fire element, but if you trained hard enough you could learn to use water jutsu. Demigods were stuck with whatever powers they got from their parents, and that was it. Well, damn, there isn't much I can say to that. I'm still in shock that the nemean line attacked us on our first day away from camp. You must have a really powerful aura to attract it so quickly, Desma said nervously, and with good reason. Naruto's aura would easily repel weaker monsters, while stronger monsters would flock to him if he stayed in one place for too long. What does that have to do with anything? I'll just kill anything that comes at us, Naruto asked with a curious look on his face. His flame-colored eyes gazed deeply into her soul, and like always, she shivered when she met eyes with him. She was going to have to get him to wear sunglasses, because no matter how warm and loving those eyes were, they were still pretty scary. It was really like staring into the eyes of somebody that held your life in his hands. He deserved his titles of Flame-eyed Prince and Male Goddess. Monsters will come back, even if you kill them. They reform after enough time had passed. Desma lectured, and opened his mouth to speak for a moment. Then he closed it and thought about it for a moment. If every monster he killed just reformed, that meant he could fight them over and over to his heart's content without having to worry about them. So I can fight it again? Naruto questioned her, and she nodded. Yeah, but they remember how you beat them last time, so they get tougher every time they lose, Desma said, hoping to prevent Naruto's train of thought. Awesome. I can't wait to see the nemean line again, so I can kill it again, Naruto said with a grin, and he went over to his bike and got on it. Desma shook her head and followed him anyway, mostly because she was finally getting the adventure she had trained for most of her life. She wasn't about to quit now, just when it was getting good. Only this guy would want to fight the same monster again, even though it will be stronger than before. Desma thought as she placed her hands on his waist. She looked at his arms and saw that the fact he wasn't wearing sleeves showed that he was more toned than even the other guys at the camp. That was impressive in its own right, and she wondered how he got those muscles. She would question Naruto about his cloning thing later, because she was pretty sure he would just lie to her again if she asked too soon. You're really warm, Desma commented with a strange look on her face when she noticed how hot Naruto's body was, and she didn't mean that in the romantic context. She meant that in the way that his body was actually a lot warmer than a human body should be. My mother is a goddess that deals with fire all the time, and can control fire. Fire is a part of my very being, and my body reflects that. Can't really help it, Naruto said as he started to pedal at a slower rate than before. It wasn't like they had a time limit or something, and there was the fact that Naruto was pretty happy with how soon he got to fight. I can't believe I didn't even get to test out my new flame-based powers, Naruto thought with a slight frown on his face. He really wanted to fight something soon that would push him to the limit, so that he could exceed his limits and grow that much stronger. Growing stronger was in his very nature after all. With Artemis now, that is very interesting, Artemis thought as she looked at the silver ring around the ring finger on her left hand. Her ring had another feature she had yet to tell Naruto about, and that was that it would tell her if he defeated any monsters while wearing the ring. It was only fitting that the huntress be alerted to when her future husband has slain a monster. The fact that the monster he had slain was the nemean lion was a feat worthy of some of the most powerful demigods. Not that Naruto could be called such a term with his blood. Yes, the term near god was much more correct in his case. Not that it mattered, because soon he would be a god. Or rather a male goddess, as she had been informed about through watching what had been going on at the camp before Naruto left. How funny, the goddess of chastity will be wed to the one that is called the male goddess. It makes me wonder what he will be a god of when he has turned. Artemis spoke to herself softly, and with amusement in her voice. The fact that people were already giving him labels when he had yet to show what he would be a god of was rather humorous, and she doubted that he would ever live down the one title she was sure he wasn't fond of. What man liked to be called a goddess after all? But it was indeed fitting. Most of his blood had come from a goddess after all. She wondered what beast Naruto would hunt next. It had been about a week since the nemean lion had attacked the blonde duo, and things hadn't been going as well as they had liked. The trouble wasn't with places to sleep, mostly because both of them were able to just sleep on the ground. They didn't get too cold because Desma and Naruto both put off a lot of heat, even if Naruto took the heat he gave off to a higher level. They were able to make great distance, even thought they had gotten off track 5 times and had to go back. No, the problem was food. Catching and skinning the food was easy, but cooking it was the problem. They had no trouble making a fire with Naruto there, but what was the problem was that the Naruto had the ability to taste things and eat through his connection. As the meat cooked, he was able to taste the food, and he started to burn it out of instinct. It was like how most gods could smell the food you burn for them, no matter where they are. Naruto was able to taste food through fire when it was being made for him. Sometimes being mostly god was a bit troublesome, because while he had enough human in him right now that he didn't have to follow too many of the codes gods were restricted by, he also had attributes he shared with them. He could bless and curse people, even though he didn't know exactly how. People could seek his favor, and he could grant them gifts. Also unable at the moment due to lack of knowledge. He couldn't truly be killed, and even if he was killed he would become a full god if that happened. It actually made her slightly scared of pissing him off, because he would one day become a god. That much was promised to happen no matter what, because all he needed were the blessings of another few gods or to die and boom. Instant god. His aura was so powerful that he was like monster repellent for weaker monsters, and every other monster wanted a piece of them. Which was why they were in. Well, aren't you an ugly fucker? Naruto commented in a cocky voice as he and Desma stared down the creature in front of them. Desma palmed her face when the giant creature, easily bigger than the nemean lion, huffed at them. She could not believe their bad luck when it came to fighting monsters, and as if to prove her point, another monster jumped out from behind the giant monster. That is the Caucus bull, and a hellhound. Desma commented with a twitching eye as she leveled her bow at the hellhound. The first creature was a huge mechanical bull made of bronze with silver horns, and it was about the size of a fully grown elephant. She could feel the heat this thing was putting off from here, and knew that she would be useless against it. The Caucus bull had metal skin that was burning hot to the touch, and could breathe fire. Not something she could deal with when she only had a very slight immunity to heat, and not full immunity like Naruto. So she would gain glory by slaying the hellhound, a black-furred giant god with glowing red eyes. This creature took the size of a small rhino, and it was growling at them with a hungry look in its eyes. I repeat and correct myself, you are both ugly fuckers, Naruto said, before the bull rushed the two of them. The hellhound stayed back for a moment, as if waiting for the bull to do all the work for it. You are an ass. Desma shouted in annoyance as she jumped out of the way of the charging bull, and pulled a golden arrow out of her backpack and shot it at the hellhound. The dog creature jumped out of the way, and growled at her but stayed put. I know what I am, thank you very much, Naruto commented to the young demigod as he ducked under the raging bull. Channeling chakra through his arm, he punched the bull in one of its back legs, but winced when his fist hit metal. He was completely unaffected by the heat, but let's face it, Naruto had just punched metal, and that would hurt. Desma just twitched and pulled 3 arrows out of her backpack and put them all on the bow, and took aim at the hellhound. She was about to fire, before she saw the hellhound vanish into the shadows. What? Desma muttered in confusion, before he heard a sound behind her and twirled around with her bow pointed right into the mouth of the hellhound, about to take her head off. Letting the arrows loose, she was happy when all 3 pierced into the brain of the creature. The hound was dead before it hit the ground. That was not her problem though, because as the creature started to fall it landed right on her and sent her skidding with it. Get this thing off me!" She shouted in annoyance at the heavy weight on her legs. That's what she said. Naruto yelled back at her in humor, before he was tackled by the Caucus bull and sent high into the air. Correcting himself in mid-air, he was able to use his chakra to stick to the neck of the bull, and he grabbed the bull by the horns as he jumped around to try and knock him off. "Get this thing off me, this thing's weight is crushing me, this is all your fault." Desma yelled as she spoke in haiku like her dad did for fun sometimes. She sighed in relief when the giant god turned into golden dust, and all that was left was the creature's fangs. She watched as the teeth started to shrink down, and reform into a fang-toothed necklace. Picking it up, she placed it around her neck, and made herself look even more like a surfer chick than before. "Ha ha! Ride cowboy!" Naruto shouted with an ever-present battle grin while he rode the top of the bull, enraging the demented bull further. The thing balked as much as it could, but a chakra-enhanced person like Naruto was able to hang on easily. The bull even tried to jump and Naruto stayed strong, mostly from previous experience with giant toads actually. "Stop playing around and kill it already." Desma shouted up at him as she walked over to the bike with a very bad limp. Her legs were more bruised from having the beast fall on her than she had thought, and she would not be walking straight for days, before she heard a loud noise. Looking over to Naruto, she saw that he had ripped the head of the mechanical bull off by using the horns. Naruto jumped from the body to the ground, while holding the horns above his own head. The horns shrank down in size so that they were only a foot long each, and Naruto nodded to himself. "How's that going to fit?" Desma started to ask, before she saw him toss one of the horns into the bike's basket. She was about to ask what he was going to do with the other one, before he tossed it to her. "Hold on to that, will you? You never know when we might have to bargain with somebody, and it would be good to have that to make an offer," Naruto commented as she put the horn in her backpack with a nod. "One of the horns of the Caucus bull would go for a lot of drachma, and you never know when you would need more drachma." "Got it. So where are we now?" Desma asked when she saw Naruto take his map out of his pocket, and look at it with serious expression. Unlike other maps, this one never really showed what states were in the country, just the compass and the dots that showed certain locations. The closest dots were silver, blue, and green dots clumped together. "Artemis and her hunters are maybe a dozen miles south of here," Naruto thought before he saw the green dot fade away, and the silver and blue dots start to move towards his orange dot. Looking at the map, he saw the closet dot not related to Artemis, and her second in command was a yellow dot. "New Jersey, Garden Gnome Shop." Naruto folded the map up and started to pedal towards the location on the map, and while he would marry Artemis when he next saw her, he wanted to marry her on his terms. He would go to her when he was ready to join her, and not a moment sooner. He was only 16, and was not in a rush to get married right now. "Where are we headed towards?" Desma asked as the two of them went at a slower rate than they normally did. "Something called a gnome shop." "Whatever a gnome is," Naruto said as he started to pedal a little faster, and Desma had to hold on tighter. From what the map said, the shop was about 150 miles to the west, so he was in no real rush. He could run that distance in a few hours if he wanted to, but he was pretty sure that Desma wouldn't like to go too fast this time. He had seen her limp, and going fast would put stress on her body. "Gnomes are like things you put on your yard," Desma commented dryly, and she could not really understand why he would want to go to a gnome shop. It was kinda boring in her opinion, but she was just tagging along with him, so it was his choice. Not to mention the bike was a gift from his mother, and it was his strength that was getting them around. "Change of course," Naruto commented as he started to go in the direction of the junkyard they had been planning on going to in the first place. Finding some cool treasure in a junkyard was much cooler than buying something to put in your lawn. Maybe he could even find something his mother had thrown away at some point, and who knows, maybe they could even find something cool because they touched something they weren't supposed to. "Back to the junkyard?" Desma asked with a small grin on her face. She blushed though when her stomach made its hunger known, and Naruto slowed the bike to a stop. "Hungry?" Naruto asked as he drew a normal kunai to prepare to go hunting in the woods nearby, and with a nod she got off the bike with him and sat on the ground. While Naruto hunted, she would use her bow to guard the bike and their stuff. Naruto was about to leave the area to hunt, before a soothing voice echoed through his mind. "Use your power, my child. Use them, and you can summon food." What the fuck? Naruto thought in shock, because usually the only voice in his head was the kawaii. The fact this voice was warm and loving meant it wasn't the angry fuzzy in his head. Disma looked at Naruto with a worried look as he cupped his hands together, and in his palms rested a flame. The flame blazed for a few seconds, before it faded away to show a bowl filled his ramen. He really is the child of Hestia. Disma thought as she watched Naruto use one of the many fabled powers of Hestia, and honestly it was one of the more useful ones in her opinion. The ability to create delicious homemade food out of nothing was one of the many powers of Hestia that Naruto seemed to have gotten from her. Naruto on the other hand sipped at the ramen broth, and his eyes widened in joy. It was the most delicious ramen he had ever tasted in his life. Not even Nikaku ramen was as good as this. He greedily drank up the ramen, noodles and all before he sat across from Disma and looked at the empty bowl. Concentrating again, Naruto turned the bowl into fire, before he tried to think of another food. "Do you have a favorite food?" Naruto asked with a small smile in place. His flame-colored eyes beaming at the new power he was able to use, and one that would make life so much easier. He was going to have to thank his mama lot more than he had planned. "With Hestia, you're welcome, Naruto. Glad to know you enjoy having one of my powers," Hestia commented to herself as she used a stick to poke at the fire she was watching Naruto through. Unlike her other children who had never awakened her powers, Naruto was unlike demigods in another way. Most children to the gods only got a few of their parents' powers, while Naruto would be able to use all powers eventually. She was the goddess that didn't just deal with the Hearst. She dealt with nearly everything that dealt with family and home as well. Things that were a part of home were part of her power, like summoning home-cooked meals, or even showing people the past or present of family members. She could control everything to do with fire. A lot of her powers were not based around battle, but her battle powers were extremely strong as well. Fire was one of the most destructive forces of nature, and could destroy whole forests in minutes. The power to summon food though was one of her favorite ones, because nothing brought a family together like a home-cooked meal. A meal she one day hoped to share with her most beloved person, her lovely son. She didn't even mind the fact that Hiro was able to summon food like she could. "One day I will make you some ramen by hand. Just you wait and see, and then we can finally speak face to face, my child," Hestia said, and if anyone was around to see her they would think she was weird. Like most of the time she was in the form of a beautiful 12-year-old girl with short brown hair and flaming red eyes. Her clothes were a brown dress with a rope around her stomach, and she wore a cloak around her shoulder with a hood over her head. She looked at the flame again and the image of her son vanished. Out of the flame her own bowl of ramen appeared with some chopsticks. She looked at her reflection in the broth, and saw her pupilless flame eyes looking back at her. It truly made her happy that when she had claimed Naruto he had gotten her flame-colored eyes. Their eyes were proof of the bond the two of them shared, and nothing could break it. "I rather like ramen myself," Hestia thought as she ate her ramen quietly, and she made Naruto's image of him eating with Disma appear in the fire. This gave her some form of comfort, because she could pretend she was eating with him. Ramen was something Kushina Uzumaki had actually gotten Hestia into in the small amount of time the two knew each other. Kushina was kind of like a friend to Hestia. The relationship was rather strange between them, but that was mostly because Kushina had been carrying Hestia's child inside her for 10 of the months they knew each other. The girl had a red-hot hair, and a personality to match. The fact she valued family above all else made Hestia like the girl even more. Somebody that treasured family was Hestia's kind of person, and like she had said before, Kushina had hair that was the same color as the embers of a fire. Hestia liked fire. "I wonder what you will do next, my child?" Hestia asked herself with a small smile on her face, with some ramen noodles hanging from the side of her mouth. She used a stick to poke at the flames some more, and the image shifted to show what she was thinking about, what she wanted more than anything else in the world. The image she had been using and changing as Naruto aged. It was the image of the two of them coated in flames, and sharing their first hug as mother and son. I hope you all liked the video, and if you all want the next part of this video please like the video and comment 3 hearts. Please subscribe to my channel so whenever I upload a video you will notify.